billion. Fred, 10 years now, the 5, 6, 7 years down the line, the government of Kenya has 30 billion for Hustler Fund, has billions of shillings for teas and mandazis on daily basis. But just getting the 29 billion to be able to do the 290 high courts, so that then you have capacity, because sometimes these cases even take long in court because of capacity, because the judge can only hear a certain number of cases in a day. And so then you will start asking and say, why is Devani spending all these years in court? A guy that should be in jail is in the streets partying. You understand? He's in the streets partying. And so there were very many broad reforms that were supposed to be done, and I think people that want to form the next government could very much use these are some of their manifestos to be able to
Ngere, for you, as you said, for you to be able to get somebody extradited, and mostly so from these developed democracies, you must have really proven your case.
Because Devani is also a citizen of the UK.
Yes, you must have proven your case to have him here.
Absolutely, you must show why.
Now, for you to do that, and then you get here, and then say there's no case against him, because the witnesses, there's no solid case against him. Do you remember? I think we've been taken for a run.
Do you remember the case of the IBC officials who ate some chickens in the UK over some printing scandals? And the company that actually was bribed to be able to be given the job in the UK, the father and the son were actually taken to court and jailed. But the characters who actually received the chicken here are still walking around. It tells you just the nature of our governance structure and institutions, and how they're not doing their work as it's required. Because this case was prosecuted in a proper judicial system, and the people who actually received the bribe, you know, the receiver of the bribe is in jail. I mean, the giver of the bribe is in jail, but the receiver of the bribe is
walking free enjoying the bribe.
Is enjoying the bribe.
The chicken has even brought different.
I think it must have been Issa Kasa that time.
It was Issa Kasa.
And
during his reign.
During his reign. And they were taken through the court system. The father and son were actually jailed for receiving bribes. But
proving that they actually gave the bribe.
Absolutely. It's not even a rumor. They said, yes, we did and we are sorry. Then they were given some sort of remorse. So I don't know what the period of time, but they served for some time. But the characters who actually collected the money are out here enjoying themselves.
The giver says, yes, I gave him and I'm really sorry. He's taken to jail. The guy who was given the bribe is in Kenya. He says, I didn't take it. And he's still free. So that's ridiculous. It just shows you how the justice system in this country is cooked.
Absolutely.
And as long as you have the top dollar, you can literally be able to wriggle yourself out.
Fred, many times I've listened to Kenyans in recent times, and one of the things they're saying is that if they would want to have a leader in the next election or in the years to come, that leader must be a leader who's going to promise us one thing, that is going to arrest and prosecute corrupt public servants. That one should be the top of them, because that is the one thing every Kenyan is telling us nowadays, that if you truly want the next leader, among the many things, Fred, that you're going to give us as your manifesto, just guarantee us that you're going to deal with the issue of corruption and maybe tribalism in government. If you're able to package that properly, you're going to have a lot of rent. Because look at what has happened since this president came into office. There are a lot of characters that have so many cases in courts that were just being dropped for unbelievable reasons. You just hear the DPP has freed this person and the case was not watertight, and the DPP gets rewarded with another top job and exits the office. You understand? And
it's like he had come in to just do a particular mission, and then out.
Absolutely, and that's the challenge that we have. It's a leadership challenge. So Devani, obviously, without a star witness like the former Minister Triton Murungi, because he was the one in charge of the department, and at his level of position as a minister, it's better placed to actually tell what are the actual facts of this case at that particular time and what the deal was all about. But clearly now, with him not showing up, Devani is going to be a free man.
Isn't there a way where you can, I don't know the legal terminology here, you can literally summon him?
You know, Fred, in the witness program is voluntary, because he's not necessarily in the case he's not being charged for this particular case. He's a volunteer witness. and then but maybe
as the cabinet servant. Yes, as a cabinet secretary of that time, I'm trying to remember the legal terminology whereby we can write and have you testify by force.
You can't force him, Fred. You know, and unfortunately, that's what's the problem that we have with the Bill of Rights. He has a right to not to or to testify, because he's just a witness in the case and not necessarily the suspect in the case. And so then that's what happens. You see what happened with the case of Babu Wino with the shooting incident. The young man said that I did not see who shot me, you know, and he's a star witness of the case because he was the receiver of the bullet. The receiver of the bullet had said that he did not see who shot him. And neither does the weapon that is being alluded to have shot him, because then that's how you do whatever the tests. The bullet that got into the ballistic test, to be able to prove that the bullet that actually hit him is the one that originated to a gun that had been licensed by whoever had been charged. And if that doesn't match, that case is over and out, even if you saw the person shoot. You remember the incident in Kisumu in 2007 when during the scuffle, and there was that police guy that goes and aims and actually shoots a guy. Remember that case? It really trended. That case, that police went scot-free because they said the ballistic test
they did not prove that
it is his gun that actually shot him. And therefore we leave it to God. You know, it's him who only knows what happens. But so that's where we are with the Yagnesh Devani's case, because the minister is actually the star witness of this case, and clearly he's not willing to commit to be able to testify in such a case.
That's a very unfortunate, but like, I like saying this, that you may get away from the worldly justice system, but there's a higher justice system where you cannot wriggle yourself out of.
Absolutely, but all is not lost, Fred, because Kenya is a going concern. Today we have leaders, but tomorrow we might have other leaders, and maybe we'll have leaders because criminal liability does not expire. We can
criminal liability does not expire.
We can come 10, 20 years later and look into the case, because this is taxpayers' money, Fred. You know, people's money came from government money.
7.6 billion shillings.
Fred, government money never gets lost. Because you have to cash it from somewhere, and somebody has to withdraw it. So it's always easy at some point in time to be able to know who received what.
You withdrew this amount. This one is the one who received
it. And you know, it only needs just 3 things. Just get a person, get KRA, get the banking system, and you'll get a criminal. You understand? It's very simple. That you got 7 billion shillings, show us your tax returns, your income tax, shows your VAT if at all you're in business, and it must match what you own. If those 3 do not match, you're gone. It's a very simple one. Those are even the characters that you're seeing amassing a lot of weight in this government, Fred. They had better pray that at some point down the line, a government does not come into play that truly wants to deal with the issue of corruption, because you can't hide. I only need to get you with your Lexus 2022, which is $100,000, which means you bought it at 15 million, and then just go to KRA with your PIN number. You see, the last 15 years, this guy never really earned $1 million. And even if he earned $1 million, he has a family, a life, and dependents. How was he able to buy 15 million, 30 million car in cash? And once he's not able to do that, that's why we have the Asset and Recovery Authority. It's just confiscation and selling. It's a very easy job.
Anyway, before we get to the Rigathi case, which is so critical, there's a looming cabinet reshuffle. And quite a number of individuals within the cabinet and government are not sitting pretty, because I remember one of the things that ODM has been saying is, we helped you get rid of Rigathi.
Absolutely.
Now we want a bigger share of the cake.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know which one it is, for the President William Ruto, he has to play ball.
You know, Fred, ODM has 86 members in the National Assembly. Vis-a-vis just about 5 MPs for Ford Kenya, which is Moses Wetangula, and another 5 members of parliament for ANC, which is about 10 members of parliament. And yet they are the key coalition partners of this Kenya Kwanza government, politically speaking, by virtue of stature. And so clearly, in terms of numbers, they completely outweigh, Papa Roma, Omwami Wetangula. You know, they completely outweigh him.
And you know, is in Raila's cross-eyes.
Absolutely, you know, because they delivered almost 86 votes. That would have completely denied them to be able to get the 233 that they needed to get there.
Yes.
And in the Senate as well, ODM has 20 senators. So clearly, again, that meant that without the 20 senators, that impeachment would have never seen the day of life.
Yes.
Because you take the 20 senators and then you bring in the Mount Kenya senators. It's almost 15, 35. They would have never made it.
Yes.
So ODM helped them to send Rigathi Gachagua to hell, quote unquote.
Yes.
And so they say, you know, it's time to reward us. And
we need to come to heaven.
Yesterday, Fred, there was another show, the Israeli show, and the headline was ODM yanyemelea minofu. Yeah, so they're really looking forward to Minofu. Yeah. And I think a lot of players within the ODM circle are looking forward to, you know, probably more cabinet positions.
Yes.
And more state department positions, PSAs, and a few ambassadors. I don't know how that works with the party ideology, being that we're at a time when people are really angry at this government.
Yes.
It's probably not the best time to join government.
Yeah, because it will come to haunt them. To haunt them.
Absolutely, because ODM as a party and as a movement for the last 20 years has largely masqueraded as a people's party, largely social democrats that are constantly working the interests of the people. And you do not want to have a government that is currently very unpopular. And at least from in as far as the masses are concerned, and then you joined him just when you are supposed to begin to start your elections. Because any party that wants to form government, Fred, I keep telling you, has to be ready by December, so that then it can be able to traverse the 300 constituencies. And if instead of you embarking on such a mission, now you join a very unpopular government, it means automatically, first of all, Fred, if that happens, if it happens that President William Ruto maybe this week, next week, or anytime soon is able to reshuffle his government and brings in ODM into government, it means that ends the business of ODM and the presidency
in the opposition.
As far as the 2027 elections are concerned.
But if you look at ODM, maybe I think, like they say, Raila Odinga is the enigma of Kenyan politics.
Yes.
I mean, every time he's lost an election, he has won.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the sense that with Raila Odinga, there is no loss of election.
Yes.
Anytime he loses, he always finds his way back to government, and I'm talking about prominent position. Yeah. This time, the same thing.
Absolutely.
He now has cabinet secretaries in some of the most powerful dockets
in government.
Yeah, in government.
You know, Fred, that's why I keep saying, probably that's what you'd call one of the 48 laws of power.
Yes.
They always say you must live to fight another day.
Yes.
So maybe those, and when you look at his history and his history vis-a-vis the many other activists that were there from the 80s and the 90s, Kwesi Wamweres and things like that, you realize that
Triton Murungi was also an activist.
But those guys at those days, one of the reasons is why they never really took office, probably they remained extreme all through. But him was even forgiving enough to be able to come and work with even a guy that jailed him for 9 years. You know, to say that you jailed me for 10 years, but okay, we can work together. It tells you about his personality, and was able to come into government and replan himself. Because when you listen to Mama Ida, she was telling us at some point that at that time things were even difficult for the family because they were not able to provide. Remember, they were targeted by the state.
Yes.
And so that coming back into government, you know, kind of gave him something to rebuild himself with. And that's how he was able to move into the, you know, he used to live in Runda some time back after that. Things started becoming better for them. So I think that has been his tact over the years. But Fred, there's something that is happening in this country that we need to pay attention to. Is that we are saying all these things, but we are ignoring what the opinion of the people is.
True.
And I think that is going to be the shocker of this election, or these coming elections, or the politics of Kenya going forward. Because all we are doing is we are banking on what you call history of the other times.
Yes.
It is true that
we are using memory.
To define what's coming ahead of us. But the times have changed because of how interests are now shaped and how people are actually able to look at things, national issues, and the dynamics, the changing dynamics in our political system currently. All these regions that have been the key players of Kenyan politics today are actually are actually now turning into swing votes. Nyanza, that has been the hotbed of opposition, now with the exit of Raila Odinga, it's becoming a swing vote. The mountain that has been in government since independence is now becoming a swing vote.
And the strangest thing is that this swing vote, and mostly so central, is really going to play a major role as to whether President William Ruto will come back to office.
When you look at the history of this country over the years since independence, the three regions that have determined who becomes president of those three regions has been Central, Western, and Nyanza. And that's why even the presidency has largely been about those three. Either vice president, president, vice president, because that is where the politics is. And now when you look at those three regions today, none of them is going to have a kingpin, at least not in the
real sense of the word.
In the real sense of the word. The Central region now will be a swing vote by a large extent. If Raila Odinga exits, either by virtue of getting his position in AU or nature. Nature can exit you as well. And then Nyanza again becomes a complete swing vote. They become total orphans. Western, we've been orphans for a long time, you know. there's not really a leader there, you understand? And yet these are the three blocks that if you put them together, you have the presidency. And so they are really discounting the opinion of the people as to how they do these deeds. But as it stands today, friend, is the most tactical thing for the president to do, because ODM then brings in the numbers that he needs.
And that's the only way he can survive.
Absolutely, he doesn't have any other way.
In 2027, because and this will move us as we get into the Rigathi Gachagua case. In 2027, you can clearly see the cards that the president is playing right now. Indicative of the alliances he seeks to build ahead of 2027. He already has Western in. He already has, now you can assume, Luo Nyanza in. And then he has of Rift Valley. He has lost Central Kenya. And the strangest thing, it has become so deeply entrenched within Central Kenya. I listened to a video. I was telling our viewers that I watched a video on phone today in the morning, where Kalonzo Musyoka, Waititu,
the Minor Njenga.
They were at a rally with a lot of young men. And these people were singing, for lack of a better word,
victory song.
Traditional Mongiki, Mau Mau kind of songs. And they're calling themselves Sons of Mau Mau. Then at one point, one of the speakers said, this one, pointing at Kalonzo Musyoka, that this one is going to be our leader. An indicator that in 2027, Kalonzo Musyoka will play a major role.
Fred, there is no doubt, first of all, we already know what the Constitution demands in as far as the presidency is concerned. And so clearly when you look at the threshold of what it takes for somebody to become president, there is no one particular region that can make anybody president. So even if the 3 million voters in the mountains turn up to vote, they can't elect a president with a registered voter base of 22.5 million. However, any candidate that begins with 3 to 4 million under his belt is way ahead of the game as far as the politics of the numbers are concerned. And Kalonzo Musyoka then comes in with another 2.5 million, say, or so, maybe from his region. There he stands then at 6 million. That one would upstage anybody that is trying to compete. The president's backyard has only 2 million voters. Remember, the Rift Valley that we talk about has always been not what is being projected. They kept saying the Rift, the king of the Rift, but you know, the Rift Valley is split 3 ways. You know, we have the 2 million voters that support the president, but his people from Central Rift. Then we have the mountain that lives in the Rift. That is almost 1.5 million people. It's almost 2 million people again. In that particular region. And then you have the other Nilotic communities, the Maasais and the Turkanas and the others that live in the Rift Valley. So it leaves the president in a very situation where he's underrepresented, because then he can only marshal 2 million people. Kalonzo Musyoka will be the biggest beneficiary of President Ruto's political blunder, because a region like the mountain, which then gives you such a big number, where it kind of gives him an uphill task of how to find those votes. But unfortunately, where he's going, Fred, the region where he's now banking on, as you're saying, you know, it's assumed that he's in Western.
Yes.
Because Western is a place that has sent home even 2 sitting vice presidents.
Yes.
It's a place where you can't come and generalize.
You can't herd. You can't herd.
That's the best word.
Western Kenya, like goats and sheep.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only place, Fred, where a sitting vice president is defeated by a local president.
Actually, the best way to describe Western Kenya is goats.
Yes.
Not sheep.
Yeah.
Because goats are very hard-headed.
Yes.
And they determine their own direction. They don't necessarily follow the shepherd.
Absolutely. And you know, that's an area where people largely vote based on principles and what they believe in.
Yeah.
Others, Raila Odinga would have never collected the kind of votes he's been doing repeatedly. The people in Western there believe in something, and if they do believe in it, it doesn't matter whether you belong to their community or not, they support you.
Yes.
And that's why even people like Musalia Mudavadi have been unable to be able to do that, because people stand on principle. I was there many times, and my home county of Kakamega is the largest ODM base out of Luo Nyanza. It is Kakamega,
yes,
followed by Kilifi, because they are rural counties.
Yes.
You know, Nairobi is cosmopolitan, and Mombasa as well is cosmopolitan.
Yes.
But when you go to a native county where 90% are natives, but the ODM is Kakamega County, and I can explain to you the reason why those people have voted the way they voted every year.
Yes.
Is because they believed in the cause of ODM regime change. So it didn't matter who is presenting it. Provided what you are saying is we want this government to change.
Yes.
So sometimes even their sons would show up, Mudavadi and Wetangula try to bring other options.
Yeah.
But they say first, we conclude this mission, and then we look at what you are. So when you have a voting base that is that principle, Fred, it will be very difficult, especially a government that has underperformed as far as service delivery is concerned. They have no reason. One uncle of mine was asking me, what reasons do we have to vote for this government? You know, he's not our uncle, he's not our relative. At least would have said he has failed, but he's our relative.
Yes.
Or he's our brother. So they have no reason. So with that, it's very hard for somebody to assume that then, because I've appointed Mheshimiwa Oparanya into cabinet, if we had vice presidents and it didn't work, so who is Oparanya for you to say that you've given us a cabinet position? So it's a very tricky area for the president to go, because clearly he has to find a way of replacing the votes that he's losing in the mountain.
He's lost, as we assume.
Yeah.
Because he's obviously gone for Kindiki.
Yeah.
We assume that Mount Kenya East,
yes,
let's, for the sake of assumption, that Mount Kenya East is gone with Kindiki to the president.
Very true.
So we have Mount Kenya. Mount Kenya East has 1 million, at least according to it, 1 million registered voters.
Yes.
Mount Kenya West has 3 million.
Yes.
And then you're talking about the mountain people in the Rift Valley, which is against around, you said around 2 million.
Almost.
Almost 2 million.
Yeah.
So this is 5 million.
Yes.
Starting, who will be hived off
his vote
from your numbers. How in the world do you win? Where do you get the 5 million?
Okay, on paper, in theory, Fred, because IBC has 22.5 million registered voters.
Yes.
And we are likely to add maybe 2.5 million more. So we are likely to have 25 million voters in 2027. Never mind, Kenya will have 30 million adults. But, you know, we do not want to assume that everybody will be as motivated to vote. So at March, we will have 25 million. With 25 million voters, 5 million might not be much, because then it means you can compensate from others. But the issue is not that there are no numbers.
Remember, we have a Gen Z
which is what I'm
population
Fred, I'm heading
that
to
is
that.
sick and tired of this government.
I'm actually alluding to that. I'm saying that on paper, even if those 5 million votes vote, it might not mean much based on what remains.
Yes.
Because then you have 20 million others
True.
and they're able to
True.
win an election very early in the morning.
True.
But you have a president who's extremely popular in those other alternative areas. That is the challenge.
Yes.
Because then when you leave these guys, you have to come to these areas and sell to them. When you go there, these are areas who are not your community, they're not your friends, they're not your people. The only thing that you must appeal to them is either how you're delivering the service to them and what they're benefiting that particular region.
Yes.
So that would be the attempt, because it's a government, and maybe you might try to use what you call government largesse, that you have given your cabinet position and things like that. But the question is then, how many people in the Kenya of 2027 are not as informed to be able to buy that.
Yes.
That becomes an issue. And then we have the new profile of voters that is coming up, which then that's what you're saying.
Yes.
And this cuts across, including the mountain.
Yes.
We have young voters that are beginning to think differently. And they're open-minded to begin to sell other ideas.
Yes.
How much of that is there is one of the things that then we're going to have to define in the next election. That's what I'm saying. The 2027 election, Fred,
it's going to be very unique.
A very unique election because of the nature of how politics will be done. Back in the days, those that could be able to raise 100 million and be able to do stadium rallies, they would do 10 stadium rallies with 100 million and be able to reach 1 million people. Today, young men on WhatsApp can do so with 100 shillings of data.
Yes.
He buys 100 shillings, buys 2 GB, he goes live on TikTok,
yes.
and he still has an audience of 100,000. So you can imagine 100 of them would be able to talk to 10 million people.
True.
So the game has changed because the few minutes that I can spend in a rally to listen to a party leader, maybe 20, 30 minutes, I have hours and hours and hours of going through a different message elsewhere. So you cannot just sit and then blankate what they're trying to say.
And just to show how important that medium of communication is, the Gen Z's protests were literally being operated from the phone.
Absolutely, we were there live. We saw it because they're able to do that. That wouldn't have happened in the old dispensation in the 80s and the 90s because you need resources to be able. For me to know who can coordinate my campaigns in Mandera, I would need to pack and go to Mandera.
Yes.
I would need to pack and go to. I'd need to pack and go to Mandera to be able to be able to build. I need to pack and go to Mandera to be able to do that, to be able to build my infrastructure in that particular county. But today, for me, I'm afraid I can go to Mandera with my phone. True or false?
Yes.
I can go to Mandera town and create some 10 friends in the next 10 minutes.
True.
You understand?
True.
I wouldn't need the 100 million. So anybody that would be banking on what used to be the financial or infrastructure advantage or government structure, because then it meant that only those at the government structure had the money and the phone and the police system to be able to do that. That has changed.
Now I can reach the world anytime and be able to communicate to them and tell them exactly.
Fred, before I came here, I was speaking to a friend of mine. He's in Vancouver in Canada.
Yes.
He's a diaspora guy and we're working on a certain project. And I was with him on phone for almost 30 minutes. That would never have happened in the years to come. So you can imagine from this studio, I can go live to 100 countries.
Yes.
Anybody that discounts that kind of access to information, then he's not aware of what is coming. And President Trump is a social media president, you know that. He's a social media president.
And chances are...
you have worked in media, Fred, from the days when it was analog, system, where you are before, by the time we do a press release and then it's received the newsroom and typed in the newspaper tomorrow, it will take ages, a lot could have happened.
True.
Today, President Trump discovered that in 2016, that look, I have 10, 20 million people. I just go live and then the news is picked and is translated.
And 20 million people is a humongous number of people.
You know, it's what is essential in the newsroom which is receive the news and then be able to process it, package it, and then deliver it. Now, if you have 20 million people to do that for you, that's what traditional media in the US failed. They were caught flat-footed. And they're going to be defeated again this year because...
actually, Trump could be winning this election.
Yeah, they're going to be defeated because of the messaging, the way we want to give a one-sided opinion. Social media has changed because you as a newsman, you want to edit it into a 2-3 minute clip, so 2-3 minutes clip, but then you go on Facebook, there's an hour full of the footage, 1 hour footage of the same thing, and the news changes when it gets to the people. So times have changed, and I think this president is probably unaware of that because I thought he would have learned from the Gen Z uprising and what happened because they were unable to control that group. People were coordinating live. Somebody seated on top of a rooftop is saying, the police have gone this side, you can go this side. This is more or less like an OCPD. But it's just a 21-year-old kid who's borrowed the 50 shillings from his father to just buy data for 1 GB of data and is able to coordinate thousands of people in town. That means, Fred, what used to happen then when we could not tell what the presidential results were? Fred, I myself, I can confirm to you, would be able to get our 290 presidential results live. And nobody will alter the results. Because of the nature of how the systems are.
The technology has played a major role.
I would have believed the president would have really succeeded had we been in the 80s and the 90s, where we only one media structure and one government structure. But with what we have now, with the devolution and now political power has been devoted to counties, You have people exercising powers in the village now. The same way President Ruto is working with a motorcade in Nairobi, is the same way my governor is moving around Kakamega with almost 30-40 vehicles. You understand? All paid for by government.
Yes.
He has that kind of, though at a low level, but he has the kind of infrastructure to attempt to challenge a president. It wouldn't have been the same case in the 80s and the 90s. Same to media, where only news that was favoring government would be able to be cleared in the newsroom to go on air. Today, before it goes on air, people already live with it.
They saw it even before you broadcast it.
Absolutely, before you broadcast it has gone live. So I think this president has a tough time because I
would love to see what is going through his mind, and mostly so concerning this calculation. Because I want to find out, where is he going to get a minimum of 3 million?
Yeah.
Even if we assume that the mountain in Rift Valley will vote for him.
Absolutely.
Where will he get 3 million votes?
Absolutely.
Yet he won this election with only 200,000.
It was a narrow escape. And that
How
time,
will he?
And you know that time he won it 200,000 with very massive appeal because he ran as an outsider and he appeared to have very new ideas. I've told you, even my own place people in Bungoma, some of them voted for him. They were saying it's because they believed that he can be able to change the system. Because he was going against the deep state, the kind of campaigns Donald Trump ran with when he was saying that it's the deep state, and he wanted to upstage the deep state. And there are people who are tired of the system who loved that, and they voted for him. That's why he was able to get some very unusual votes, Fred. He got 1 million votes from the opposition, 600,000 in Western, 400,000 on the coast. These are areas that had traditionally voted for the opposition. And most people believe that he rigged, but Fred, I keep telling you,
that one I know he won.
He got the votes, and I saw the people, I saw my own relatives go and vote for this president.
Now, one of the people that is going to play a major role in how this looks in 2027 is Rigathi Gachagua, the deputy president.
Absolutely.
Who has already been impeached. But stay orders have been given. Now, you're a lawyer.
Yes.
And I had a conversation with a gentleman who tells me that the deputy, Rigathi Gachagua, is no longer the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya, despite the conservatory orders, because he's already been impeached by the Senate.
You know, Fred, that's the challenge with communication, because you understand that the process of electing or nominating and vetting and clearing a new deputy president is actually legally provided for in our laws. But most importantly is that you can only become a deputy president once you're sworn in as a deputy president, even if you're elected. You know, you are what you call a deputy president elected, like who are in 2022. It is until when you take oath then you become a deputy president, because up until that you're just a president-elect, so you cannot perform any executive role. And so as it stands today, then it means Kenya does not have a new deputy president. We only have an impeached deputy president who is still a serving president based on the conservative.
So he's still serving as a deputy president?
Absolutely, because the decisions of the Senate has been stalled by the courts. Remember, courts is also a quasi-law-making institution, because then what it does through interpretation of laws, it also sets it almost sort of sets a new legislation. You remember the case of Minor Kiai and the issue of voting, the value of the vote at the ballot. It is not expressly provided in the Elections Act. So then the judiciary took the route, took the responsibility of interpreting the law, because that is its primary mandate. It presumes, it tries to interpret what the Constitution meant when it said that, for example, in the particular case of Minor Kiai was on the sanctity of the vote. And they gave a decision that the only vote that matters is what is casted at the polling station. And that what is casted there is final. And that even if there's an alteration, it can only be done by a court of law. Those are not things that are expressly provided for in the Elections Act. But now it's become part of the legislation as far as the elections are concerned. That if you go to court today, you can, based on those decisions, the precedent of those cases, you can be able to challenge a situation where your results have been altered or where you feel you have been faltered. So it is where we are as well with the issue of this deputy president. Remember, it's the first time the country is seeing an impeached deputy president. So we don't know which word to use of who he is. But what we know is that there is no new deputy president that has been sworn in, and therefore we have an existing deputy president that has not been fully relieved of his duty. So how to brand him is what this court is now going to help us, because it's a quasi-legislative institution. It gives some direction as far as the laws are concerned, and I think this is very critical from what we come.
So today they decide on whether the conservatory orders will be lifted.
It's one of those decisions because they begin to hear.
They begin to hear.
Yeah, because that is where the case was supposed to proceed, only that they'd already challenged the bench. So they had to sort the issue of the validity of the bench before then they can begin.
They've also appealed to a higher court on their refusal to recuse.
I haven't seen that. That's what I was looking forward to yesterday, because I assumed that would have been the case.
Yes.
I don't know how the judicial team, the legal team for the deputy president is planning its work, but that would be an outright option for me if I was his legal advisor, because you know that's a technicality and allows the courts to delay this process for a long time, because you can go to the court of appeal, and then the court of appeal, for example, might agree with the high court. I can still go to the Supreme Court. That allows the country to move on.
True.
You know, even now as we spoke, you saw yesterday they were saying that they reinstated some of the security of the deputy president because the country is beginning to move on from this issue of impeachment.
Yes.
As more and more Kenyans begin to see the details of the case.
Yes.
Because on the day of impeachment, it was an emotional reaction.
Yes.
So those who are just happy to see the guy, they go,
yes.
not that they hate him already,
yes.
but maybe for political reasons. But they have since gone to sleep and woken up fresh with new ideas. And
they're thinking, wait a minute.
Maybe this guy is not our biggest problem. Yes. Because I heard some people say that. They say, indeed, we have reservations with Rigathi Gachagua. Maybe we do not agree with his conduct, but this is not our primary activity now. We're interested in government and service delivery.
Yes,
and so
deal with the economy.
Exactly. So the matters that are more important now they are coming back into brains, because on that day is what you call heat of passion. You know, the heat of the moment, the kind of passion that's generated. So they say, Rigathi must go. But now they've sat and thought through it. And they say, now we can focus on other things.
Yes.
So if he can be able to spend more time on technicalities to extend
just delaying the will of justice.
Yeah, absolutely. For a long time, people begin to get tired of this process.
Yes, just think,
and then politically, it loses weight and then gives him chance to get back politically and be able to reinvent himself, which is a big a possibility for
and reinventing himself is something he'll need to do if he still maintains, if the impeachment process is lifted, in the sense that he's allowed to participate or take over.
You know, Fred, what is interesting? What is interesting that, for example, this challenge of the technicality of the bench can go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Oh.
You understand?
Yes.
And then once the Supreme Court gives a decision,
they have to come back
to High Court and begin to listen to the case.
Yes.
Remember, he has an impeachment case that he filed.
Yes.
The issue of public participation, the issue of validity of the nomination. Those ones have yet to be touched. I understand.
Yes.
And then that one can take time to be listened. And again, he's free to go all the way to the Supreme Court.
My goodness.
You understand?
Yes.
So I think those in the presidency now are very aware that we're going to spend a lot of time in these courts. They would have. This is why I like. I keep insisting on that the importance of the kind of media that we have now. Could you imagine had we been in the 80s and the 90s and there was only one platform to pass information? The guy would be home today, isn't it?
Yeah, he'd be home.
He would be with the old constitution. He would be home today.
Gone.
So that's why I kept saying that the last line of defense that Kenyans have today, Fred, has to be the new judiciary, the new 2010 judiciary, and how it has been structured, and the new social media that is able to keep in check of what is happening in there. Those are the only two things that have stopped Rigathi Gachagua from being sent home. He would have been sent home a very long time ago. You understand?
Yes.
So based on what we have now, and thankfully for the new constitution, Rigathi Gachagua has enough time to spend in courts as these guys continue to ponder what to do next. Maybe if those insisting that we don't have a deputy president are essentially telling us Kenya is now being run without a deputy president, it is not true.
Yes.
If God forbid, if anything was to happen today, it was President Uhuru Kenyatta, Rigathi Gachagua becomes president.
Rigathi Gachagua becomes president.
Absolutely.
Whoa.
Absolutely.
That's
the deputy
crazy.
president of the Republic of Kenya. The conservative orders have stayed the decision of the Senate. So that is the last decision on that case. So it retains the status quo.
Yes.
He retains the status quo as a deputy president.
All right.
The rest is just optics. It's just like the way ODM used to say people's president.
Yeah.
It was just something to make
us feel good.
But the reality is that Uhuru Kenyatta was president.
Yes.
So that's the same thing with this deputy president. The court has already stayed that decision of the Senate, which is a gazetted decision, and once that is done, then he remains the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya.
All right. Unfortunately, time is spent. We got to bring down the curtains on this show. interesting conversations. Let's find out what's going to be happening today. The court sessions will be on. I can see, would have loved to see a number of things here, but your last comments.
For me, I'm just happy that Kenyans are beginning to appreciate the strong institutions that were given to us by the 2010 Constitution, and the judiciary is doing its best. I think let's keep supporting these institutions so that they can be able to focus more on the people's mandate, which is to be able to serve things in the interest of to make decisions in the interest of the president, so that at least our country can be able to remain peaceful and stable.
All right. Do have yourself a lovely morning. Remember, at 9 we have Your Faith Today, where we'll speak on the conversation of, the real Christianity. We have quite a number of people who are proclaiming, and mostly so in the high places, proclaiming to be Christian, yet there's no aspect of Christianity being seen in their lives. So having conversations on something around that. Do have yourself a lovely morning.